Not a problem.
Hello and welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Game Slice, the game dev event for playtesting unfinished, unreleased, or early access games. We are here speaking about a project called An Embered Expedition by Fuzz Force, and from Fuzz Force we have Alan Eigel. Alan, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you doing?
I am doing wonderful. These interviews are going swimmingly, and I do not expect this one to be any different. For those who do not know about Fuzz Force or An Embered Expedition, what is this game?
An Embered Expedition is essentially a relaxing exploration game. So it's basically you're going to get dumped straight into the world. You see a beginning cutscene, and then from there, there's nothing that's going to get in your way until you're done with the game. You just play as the little dragon that you can see on the screen. You navigate the frozen isles to find your missing teammates who got lost on the previous expedition, and hopefully bring fire back to the island and defrost the island before you leave.
How big is the team that's working on this project?
Just me.
Just you. You're the master of ceremonies as far as the Embered Expedition goes.
I am. I'm gonna have to get someone to do the music because completely tone deaf, can't do music.
Where are you based?
I'm in the UK, so that whole game slicing is a little bit late for me, but it's all right. I stay up quite late, so it's not a problem.
We very much appreciate your time and energy in staying up for us. How and when did this project start?
This project started a few months ago. I finished off Fuzz for Spook Squad and released that back in June. And then I moved onto sort of a Battle Network style prototype using the same assets. I was like, yeah, I could do this because it's using the same assets. I'm having a bit of fun with it. But then I was like, it's kind of not fully what I want to make. What I really wanted to make is just a nice game where you explore and you just run around, you find things, you do what you want at your own pace. Because I always find exploring the really good parts of games, but a lot of games don't really let you explore. It's either sort of gated behind story MacGuffins, like you can't go here until you've been over here and got the thing, or my game's a little bit Metroidvania-ish in that you do learn jumping abilities as you go, but it's a lot more relaxed than that. You can still basically go everywhere. There's not going to be huge areas locked off behind the high jump, for example.
So for those of you who don't know, Alan and Fuzz Force was actually the winner of last year's Game Slice. And I've come to the understanding that like Fuzz Force seems to be like an expanded sort of universe. Like it's one game into the next, things are sort of happening. Is that accurate? And if not, could you sort of expand on what the Fuzz Force is?
Yeah, the Fuzz Force started as basically a big banner for a whole series of games starring these animal characters being the heroes. And as I made more games, they'd fit under this Fuzz Force and sort of be different divisions of the Fuzz Force. So the first one was the Spook Squad. This one is sort of focused on the Elite Explorers. And then if there's another one, it'd be another alliterated name, for example, but it might have a completely different gameplay style. So this one doesn't strictly tie into Spook Squad, but there may be a few nods to Spook Squad in it.
The FCU, the FGU, Fuzz Game-O-Matic Universe, something like that. You can workshop that. So as far as the Fuzz Force and I guess the Embered Islands, do you have any other games that you sort of use for inspiration or any other kinds of media?
The biggest inspiration for this game currently is a Short Hike, because it's essentially a game that's the same sort of thing. As soon as you start the game, you see a little cutscene, and then it just says, get to the top of the mountain. That's it. That's the whole story, your whole motivation. But it's less about the destination, and it's more about the journey. And there aren't exactly a lot of hard locks in the game that you can't get past. There's one at the beginning where you have to get your first golden feather to be able to climb up the cliff, the first 1 meter high cliff. And then at the very end, when you get near the top, you need that you have a certain amount of gold feathers. But it's basically, if you don't have gold feathers, you just run off when you find some more. That's how it works. It's not you have to specifically go to this area. If you want to progress in the game and climb up higher, you have to go out and find the golden feathers yourself. And that's what I find really exciting about games, because you found the progression yourself. And by finding the golden feathers, like solving the puzzles or interacting with the other characters, it's then you who's pushed forward the exploration part of it and the gameplay part of it. And so that's the sort of thing that I want to capture with this game again, because, you know, short hike, clues in the name. It's a very short game. It's basically all anyone ever says. I wish there was more. I wish it was longer. I feel the same way. I wish there was more, but I'm actually quite surprised there hasn't been a whole lot similar to a short hike since then. And that came out, you know, a little while ago. There's been chill games, but there's not been as many games focused on the exploration part of it with, you know, light platforming.
So with the demo we have in front of us, obviously this is a demo to just sort of give the idea of what's going to be ahead. What are some ideas of how you'd like to expand this moving forward?
So currently the move set in the demo is sort of what I would be working on for the game. In that the first move that I even had was the charge jump mechanic. I was looking at different ways of having a character jump, because double jumps are fine, but they're a bit overdone, they're a bit safe, it's a bit easy. So I prototyped up a few different kinds of jumps. One I really liked was a bounce jump. So you jump from a height, you came down, as soon as you hit the ground you bounced up to like the height you jumped from, plus, you know, a bit more. But it seemed a bit obtuse that you'd always sort of be looking down to find the ground. If you wanted to get high, you basically have to jump off everything for miles. And it didn't quite work, so we landed on this charge jump mechanic where you hold the button and then you can release it, then you do a big jump out of it. And it's sort of from there that I came down to it. But as is, there's a bit of feedback that releasing to jump, even, you know, not even doing this charge jump, is just not very nice. So
Something
going forward, yeah, we'll change how jumping works to maybe just be a more traditional, as soon as you press A, you jump. It's not when you release. And then we can change the sprint mechanics to incorporate this charge jump instead, that maybe the sprint becomes something useful for breaking blocks, or there's something in your way that you charge yourself into. When you're in this sprinting charge state, you jump, and that's when you do the big jump, and it sort of combines the two moves a bit better. And then eventually it would be nice to have just some way of like pounding the ground to then unearth treasures, because people like digging, they like treasure hunting, salvaging things. So that's a move that I'd like to look at in the future.
So considering the fact that you're a solo dev as of right now, what has been sort of the most difficult part of game development in general for you?
A lot of the issues have been sorting, like learning, because before starting Spook Squad, I didn't know how to write code that much. So Spook Squad was like a learning experience, but I had help from my friend because he does code professionally. I could ask him how to do things, but there are some things he just doesn't know how to do, and especially coming on to Embered Expedition, he hasn't had much experience with characters. So it's been a bit of a challenge right now, sort of learning characters, looking at jumping, looking at movement. So when I get a bit stuck with that, it's like it's up to what I can find on the internet as a resource.
Yep.
And I think that's the challenging part. Like Spook Squad is quite simple in a way. Like the character moves around a grade 1 space at a time. You know, it's pretty simple mechanically. But when it comes to a character, it's like, how does a character interact with water? How do they interact with walls? How do they interact when they're, you know, falling off things? And it's just finding all those little bits to piece together. There's been the challenge for me personally in regards to this.
What has been the most enriching or positive part about all this?
I think just doing the character animation, I would say, to be honest.
Yeah, no, that's reasonable.
It's Spook Squad was based like on a tabletop game, so the characters were all these little bobblehead Weeble characters where they're not rigged with a skeleton or anything. They're just different pieces, like the hands are separate and the head and the tail are separate, and they just get slotted into Unity, and I animated them in there. Really easy. But this time, Dina is a full, like, fully modeled character, and I've learned how to do the skeleton and get the bones set up properly, and I've painted weights, and then I've been doing keyframe animation to like get it to run and jump and hover, and then putting those into Unity, doing the animation, blend tree animations and stuff. That whole aspect of it has actually been really rewarding, just to have a fully animated character compared to the bobbleheads of the Spook Squad.
All that hard work paying off.
Yeah, that's for sure. So I'm looking forward to doing some more animations. Some of them are, some of them are missing. Some of them are a bit lacking. Like, I'd probably want to do some more with her tail, perhaps. Maybe her tail just follows her path and isn't animated, like sort of a bit of a jiggle bone thing.
How do I want to ask this? So considering Spook Squad was your first game, right?
Yes.
What led you into game development? What was your journey into game development? What compelled you to start?
I started, well, back in university, I just did a 3D game art course. So that's when I learned modeling and 2D art and stuff. And from there, I got a job at a web games company doing work for hire stuff. We did some stuff for Lego and Playmobil and the like. But as time has gone on, they've moved towards mobile development and now into hyper casual games. And unfortunately, as an artist, hyper casual games art isn't very exciting. It's a lot of blocks, it's a lot of cubes, simple shapes. So it's kind of from there. And also the game design is a lot of sort of idle mechanics, and it's not the sort of thing that I'm interested in playing. So from there it was, I'll make some game design ideas, and maybe I'll do some coding to make these game ideas like little prototypes. And then it's from there that I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm actually understanding this code and it's going in. I'm learning how to do it. That I then took it a step further and sort of prototyped a few simple things with Spook Squad. And then it's just like, just doing it. Just doing the whole thing. Going all in, making a game, kept my scope simple. I was like, I'm going to do this in like 18 months. And, it's a simple game, nothing too strenuous mechanically. So I was like, yeah, I think in 18 months I can do this. I can fully release a game, learning how to code, doing, the UI interfaces and the user experience, build the Steam page, release on Steam. So it's basically just, I was a bit bored at work, really.
That's actually really interesting. I hope you don't undersell in the future how hard it is to make a deadline. And was it 18 months to finish?
Yeah, I wanted to make a game in about 12 to 18 months.
And it took 18.
Yeah, 18.
That's still really impressive that you had an accurate deadline and you actually met it. Since you actually come from games development before you went solo, what kind of advice do you think you'd like to give to other indies who might either be in a position right now and thinking of going solo, or just starting their journey?
I saw Victor said it yesterday, what I was going to say as well. You just you just got to do it. You got to get into it. There's no point waiting around. You see lots of people coming up with excuses as to why they can't do it. It's like, oh, I'm not good at art. I'm not good at programming. It's like, I can't do music. It's like, you can buy character models and you can buy models of trees. And if you need help with coding, there's so many resources online to help you do it. And you really just got to break it down as well. It's like, you're not, oh, how do I make a character? It's like, no, how do you make a character move? How do you make a character face the direction they're going? How do you make a character jump? It's like all small little things as you're going on. You're not making a game. You are, you make the guy, and then you make the guy go from A to B, and then what happens at B, this happens at B. So it's all small steps for doing games and just getting into it. You can't be too overwhelmed and let that be an excuse to not do it.
So it sounds like breaking it down is kind of important to the process.
Yeah, I'd say so. Like even in even at my day job, it's not that you have to make this many characters. It's like, well, how long is it going to take you to do this one character? And you sort of break it down like that. It's like, okay, it's going to take me, a day to do this character. Even now on like these, I'm doing an update for Spook Squad, and I'm adding more enemies. But because I've done it before, I know how long it sort of takes to do an enemy. So from there, I know how long I have and how many I can sort of fit in this time. Because I know, an enemy takes me half, 3/4 of a day, depending on the enemy. So, at that pace, it's knowing your limits as well. Like, you break stuff down, you know what you can feasibly do, and then set yourself like a time limit to get it done. Like, if you spend a long time on it, it's okay. But sort of don't let that bog you down.
You mentioned knowing your limits. Was there ever a point in either the prior development or this one where you thought you were less limited than you were and you ran up against that? And if so, sort of how did you solve that?
Straight up on Spook Squad, I kept the art very limited compared to what I could potentially do, just because I guess in a way I knew I could do it. And I was like, well, okay, the art's not the focus of this game. Learning how to code is the focus of this game. But still, I have, this, I want to do it in 18 months. And after I'd done the first character, Finn the Fox, I was like, well, okay, I know doing the character takes about a week. If this character's more complicated or he looks more detailed in his texture, like how's that going to affect other characters going forwards? Like if his weapon is hyper realistic and full of curvy, bendy shapes, like how's that going to affect other characters going forward? And those are the sort of things you got to think about. It's like fine thinking, oh yeah, I can do this character hyper realistic, but when you've then got to do 15 more characters, it's like, is that something you could feasibly do in the time that you're trying to get it done by? And also, is it something that you could stay motivated for doing? Because even now, making these new enemies for like half a day, it's getting a bit of a drag just doing it, like 2 weeks straight, just doing these enemies at, this simple Spook Squad art style. So just, don't necessarily push yourself too hard. Just be realistic about if something's got a lot of quantity in it.
So one of the things that is very striking and strong about the Fuzz Force games is that the art direction is consistent, cohesive, and relatively competent, and that makes sense because you're coming from art in games anyway, right? Do you have any advice for making strong characters, keeping your art style cohesive, things like that?
I think when it comes to just keeping your art style cohesive, it is just sort of doing one area or one character first and then working out what you're doing with it. Because even though you say Spook Squad looks cohesive, there are a lot of things that I did at the beginning for the forest area that actually didn't carry across into the other areas. Like the grass has this extra detail on it, on the ground, that's like not done anywhere else. Like the ground's really simple in the second and third area. The trees have these boxy square shapes on them to represent the leaves, but then that's not carried over anywhere else either. So the style actually got simpler from the first area in sort of being more solid colors and just bringing out highlights to adding additional stuff. So it's like your style can change, but just try and sort of keep it similar. Like I generally went for a lot of boxy shapes. I decided early on that if certain angles were too sharp, then they'd be hard edged. So if like the characters have a lot of hard edges on them, they're not smooth smooth face. Like Finn has a very boxy, rectangular tail, and then that kind of carries on to Dottie, who has extra bits of fur that are quite boxy and square on her as well.
How long? I'm sorry. How long do you plan to like keep plugging away at an Embered expedition to get it to where you want it to be?
The time frame for an Embered expedition is, I'm hoping, for about 6 months. So, as I say, mechanically, it's kind of there. Some things need changing. But apart from that, it is just building this island that you can explore, populating it with extra models and stuff to bring the world alive. I've got to make a few extra characters, but they're just sort of NPCs. You don't play as them, so they should be a bit simpler. And a lot of the core gameplay mechanic of like lighting torches and getting more fire reserves is like done already. That's kind of what I was looking forward to coming off Spook Squad, because in that game I was making status effects and making these passive ability module effects, and it was just stuff that's just adding on the top of what I'd already made. So for this one, I was really hoping to just get the base mechanics done at the beginning, and from there it's just dotting them around everywhere and then building this world for it instead of piling more on the top.
Is this going to be at the island we've seen in this clip? Is this going to be the whole thing, or are you going to expand on it a bit?
The island in the game is just one of the 7 areas that I had planned. So the big bonfire that you can see by the docks, there'll be 5 of those dotted around different points of the island, and the point is to light the 5 of those to then be able to release the thing in the middle, and then that's when you can leave and end the game. Whether or not you find everyone of your expedition team is sort of up to you, but that would be the core part of it. You light the bonfires, you get the abilities, you can do more exploring. So hopefully people do like the big bonfires to carry on.
The reason I laughed is, just ditch your team.
It's freedom. That's what it comes down to.
How much do you like them? You decide. That's really funny.
You don't even know him.
There you go. Do you have any future like long-term goals for Spook Squad that or is it just going to be keep making games?
Yeah, it's just keep making games, really. It'd be nice to just be in a position where I can keep making games that people would want to play.
Yeah. Very fair. All right. Well, we are coming up on our time for this segment. But before we go, where can the public find you?
I'm active-ish on Twitter. It's been a bit quiet since the launch, but I'm picking it up again now because of the update. And then this expedition has its page on Steam. Fuzz for Spook Squad's on Steam. I've got a Discord channel, which is the Fuzz Force HQ. You should be able to search it.
All right.
And yeah.
All right. And as with most, if not, should be all of our interviews, you can hop on to the Game Slice Twitter at Game Slice Event, and you should be able to find some information on where you can find Alan from here. Before we go, is there any closing statements you'd like to leave our Game Slicers with?
Yeah, I guess for the exhibitors, it's just, trying to look critically at feedback. And when it comes to the playtesters, it's trying to be critical of the game as well. It's not, it's good if it's fun, but if there are even like small things, I think it's really important to point out, like, if there's something really small that's a bit annoying or a bit unclear, right? Because if a developer doesn't know that something's a little bit annoying or a bit obtuse, then they can't really fix it because they're very blinded and zoned in on their own game. They've been working on it for ages. Everything makes perfect sense. So if something doesn't make sense to a new person, it's really important that that gets fixed for future new people. Otherwise, someone else could see that and it's a big deal breaker for them.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Alan. Up next at 5 p.m. EDT, we have a presentation from Exola about how to prepare a pitch to investors. This will be followed by a Q&A. So drop any questions in chat and stay tuned to GameSlice. We'll see you in a couple of minutes. Alan, once again, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.